and welcome to another episode of Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. And before we continue on into that Burt Reynolds month that we started on Tuesday, I want to talk to you guys about Patreon. We have a Patreon. We have tons of content on there. We have I want to say 8 episodes uploaded on there. If you want to check that out, you can help support the show. It's only $5 over there, and you can get a lot of fun stuff. But for this Thursday episode, and that feels weird saying Thursday, we were talking about 1973's White Lightning, starring Burt Reynolds, who we're keeping on talking about this month. This is the first movie starring him, I will say, that we've covered, where he is the main focus, the star of this movie, playing Bobby Gator McCluskey. Have you seen White Lightning before, Ryan, or is this the first time?
This was the first watch for me.
First watch. I've seen this 0 times as well. It was the first time. This is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite exploitation movies, actually.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right. Kind of hits some of those notes. It's Hicksploitation through and through. How did you feel about White Lightning?
It wasn't great, not gonna lie. I kind of expecting a lot more. I mean, Burt Reynolds, he's kind of got the charm going on. He's kind of, he tries to act like super flirty with the female, and there with a lot of the other females in there. But
yeah,
I don't know. The car scenes, they were good, but there's only 2, maybe 3, if you can count the one in the very beginning where he gets the car for the first time. But not a whole lot of car stuff.
And this movie is 2 hours, almost 2 hours long, and there's only 2 car chases. I was so disappointed. But I think for me, this movie is just very mismatched. I think there's some really cool scenes, and I think there's just some scenes that are almost just the movie repeating itself over and over for length. And I think that's its downfall. So, I think it has a cool start. Gator McCluskey, he's in prison for moonshine running, of course, the White Lightning, as they call it. And good. Here's a question that just popped in my head. Have you ever had moonshine, Ryan?
I have
as well. Not the kind that'll make you go blind, but I did had some homemade alcohol at some point, and I don't see why anyone would be. I need that. I need moonshine.
So I've had the flavored ones that you can get at novelty gift shops or whatever. It's this is pumpkin moonshine.
Do you think that's the kind of stuff they were running in this pumpkin spice moonshine?
Well, it wasn't orange, so no.
Yeah, no. But so this movie, I guess I didn't expect that Gator McCluskey was going to be working for the cops the whole time.
Yeah, he's a federal guy.
Yeah, he's a federal guy, and pretty much, his baby brother gets killed, so he kind of takes a bargain to get out of prison. He works for the feds to bust moonshiners. But his whole goal is to get the sheriff and not the actual moonshiners, because the sheriff is taking money off of all of these people.
And guess who the sheriff's played by?
Yeah, Ned Beatty again.
The first scene of this movie is Ned Beatty in a canoe. This is canoe exploitation. These 2 movies.
Is that what's going on? Are we just doing canoe movies now? I thought that was such an interesting connection.
If Longest Yard has a Ned Beatty in a canoe, then I will lose my mind.
Right? Yeah. No, and I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in more Burt Reynolds movies. But I'm just looking at his career. He did Deliverance, and then from there on, he was in Nashville, All the President's Men, Network. This dude, Superman, 1941. Even though that movie's not great, but he did a lot. So I think it's cool that we're also seeing the start of his career as well as Burt Reynolds.
Well, it's so weird because like if you look at the age of Ned Beatty and Burt Reynolds, I mean they're relatively the same age. I think think about like there's only like a year separating them maybe, but
Really?
yeah,
Wow, that's a huge surprise to me.
really? Well, because like in this movie, so like in the other movie, it's kind of played that they're around the same age. I mean, if you Google their ages around like that time, I mean, they were all like in their early to mid 30s. So I mean, that's like my age now, which is scary to think about. And it's like,
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, they're all in their like early 30s doing that movie. But then you look and this movie, like Ned Beatty looks like he aged like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like compare, and it's only like a year separated.
Yeah, Ned Beatty here. He's looking, he's not looking great, but Burt Reynolds looks like not a day has changed. He's got the great look. He's got the style and all
no mustache yet.
No mustache yet, but all the women do love him. Burt Reynolds, the mustache is iconic, but it's not so iconic that when he loses it, he looks weird to me.
No, but I will say, I think this is kind of, so like one of the common criticisms that Burt Reynolds had like leading up to his breakout role is that he looked too similar to Marlon Brando.
I could see it. Yeah.
And I had even said that on the Shark episode where I was like, it feels like he's doing like a Marlon Brando impression.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes sense. So I don't think he looks bad without the mustache, but I do think that's kind of what sets him apart from other actors.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see when he gets that mustache. But unfortunately, I have things to say about White Lightning, but for me, it was just kind of like, it was just a little, I hate to use this word, boring. It
was a little dull. Yeah.
Yeah. He goes into town, he kind of cruises around, and this movie really likes to promote that Burt Reynolds could get with any woman he wants. He's kind of talking to women on the street. Really weird cut. I don't know if you even noticed this, but he's talking to the girls and it fades out the talking and plays music, but not like to transition to another scene. It just like does it for an uncomfortably long amount of time.
Well, yeah, and then he just goes back to talking to him, and I was like, are they just saying that conversation wasn't important? They really wanted you to hear this song, or
yeah, or like the audio was bad and they just tried to cover it up. I don't know. But Burt Reynolds just kind of drives around a lot of the movie and just tries to figure out who these people or how to get evidence on the sheriff, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is trying to take down the sheriff, and the movie does. So, I mean, like, mainly it's him like intimidating a bunch of like the local gangsters or whatever, like trying to be like, hey, I want in on this whiskey running gig, and the feds are, basically just like, oh, you need to try to collect as much information as possible, but he really doesn't collect that much information on these people. He doesn't ask a lot of questions, and he kind of just does his own thing. And he does a successful whiskey run, which is one of the car chase scenes, which is pretty good. I mean, it's not. It's a good scene.
I think its ending I like the most out of it, where he crashes onto the barge and it's like halfway hanging off the barge. I think that stunt is really neat.
Yeah, that one looked really good.
Yeah,
but then like that ends, and then you don't get another car scene until a lot later. But he's kind of like the main focus. It kind of feels like he's kind of hitting on like the guy that he's working with. He's hitting on like his wife, girlfriend, whatever, and they have a little like affair or whatever. And
yeah. Something about that grossed me out so much. I know that's weird. Just the way she talked, because she was like at one point, I bloomed early at 8 years old. It was like I got started on sex early, and I was like, oh God.
It's like I took a 9-year-old little boy behind the cornfield. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and for some reason, Burt Reynolds, he's like, I could get a taste of that. What is shiggy pudding is what she called it.
Oh God, no, I don't remember that. But
Yeah. And then this is late in the movie, but she like feeds him eggs off of a plate with her bare hands and puts it in his mouth while he's
Oh,
swimming in like a swamp.
yeah, he's swimming in like a murky lake. So
Yeah. But yeah, that's the kind of, he has a love affair with this woman, and the guy's kind of getting angry the whole time about it, but he's kind of skirting away with his charisma. He's able to get away with it almost.
yeah, and I mean, he's kind of like one of those guys. You know, he pretty much knows he can get whatever he wants, and
Mhm.
eventually it is found out by the police, the sheriff, that he is working for the feds, and they capture him, and they beat him up, and they're about to rape the girl, but luckily they
Yeah.
escape.
God, yeah, it got, of course, it, every movie we've seen the cover on here, it seems to always go to that. But I think it adds one of the elements to Burt Reynolds in this that I think is cool. He is scarred up, he gets hurt from it, and his eye is covered by a bandage for like the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he does get hurt a lot, which there are other movies. I don't want to spoil it, but where he gets there's one movie, I'm not going to say which one in case we do watch it in the future, where he gets his hand cut off, and
God.
he has to live with that and
Gotcha.
deal with
And
that.
and he got hurt bad in Deliverance as well.
Oh yeah, he actually did legitimately get hurt. So
Oh, he did? Oh, wow.
yeah, he got hurt on the set of Deliverance. I didn't mention that. Like he with like the one scene where he's like in the waterfall and he's like going down the rapids. He like breaks his coccyx, his tailbone.
Oh my God.
Um,
Brutal.
but yeah, it's there's a lot of like, but there are like a couple of like weird scenes in this one. There are like little funny bits of dialogue in here too, where he's trying to talk to like one of like the big like whiskey runner guys, and the guy's like trying to intimidate Burt Reynolds by like throwing like a knife to the guy's throat, and Burt Reynolds is like, "How would you like me to shove that knife up your ass?" And the guy's like, "I wouldn't like that at all."
Yeah, I wanted to mention that scene because I think that's the funniest line delivery. Because like he literally just like, I wouldn't like that at all. Just like the most plain answer to anyone being threatened I've ever heard.
And you're just like, yeah, you know what? I can relate. I wouldn't like that either.
Yeah, very relatable character.
They make it very clear that Ned Beatty's character is a huge racist, and he says like, "Can you believe all these politicians trying to integrate our schools?"
Yes, of course.
But the movie does end with a big final car chase, thankfully. Another pretty decent one. I mean, Burt Reynolds is outrunning the cops, and Ned Beatty, spoilers for the ending, Ned Beatty does get his comeuppance. But the really cool scene, I thought like how it ended was kind of clever, where Burt Reynolds like drove down like underneath the hill, and then Ned Beatty's character took like the hill really fast. He thinks it's going to like lead downwards or whatever, but ends up like landing into like a lake.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. I think like because that's kind of like the finale of the car chase scene, right? I think both the finales of the car chase scenes are good, but I feel like all the rest of the car chase wasn't all that interesting.
No,
Yeah.
I've seen better.
Yeah, I've seen better, and we are going to see better. I haven't seen all these movies, but I can almost guarantee we're going to end up seeing better here.
Well, so fun fact, the stunt coordinator for this movie was Hal Needham. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, he was the director of Smokey and the Bandit.
Cool. All right, cool. So he
directed that, and he directed Hooper,
Nice.
which Hooper is about a stunt guy. So it's, the man knew his stunts. So I'm thinking probably he had a lot more creativity since he was the director, and he could probably plan out the stunts having been a stunt coordinator. So I think there are better ones to come. I can almost guarantee it. Fun fact though, Nathan.
Okay.
Who do you think at one point was attached to direct this movie?
Ron Howard.
No. No.
Dang. No, I don't know who.
Well,
oh wait. I do know. I read this, but go ahead.
It is, in fact, Steven Spielberg,
Yeah.
who at one point was attached to direct this movie, but decided he didn't want his first movie to be this movie because I guess they were wanting he wanted a lot more personable type of movie. He wanted he wanted his first movie to feel a lot more personal to him, which is why he went out and did his first major motion picture, which was Sugarland Express.
Yeah, and you can tell why he was picked for this because he made the TV movie Duel before this, which is all takes place in a car, and he definitely would have been a great pick. But Sugarland Express is an excellent movie that we should cover at some point on here.
I haven't seen it, so I'd love to do it.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like those what if type of scenarios if you think about it. Because imagine if Steven Spielberg directed this movie. I mean, because like you said, he did Duel and then he did this one.
mm-hmm.
He'd be like, he would almost be typecast as like the car movie director.
Yeah, I wonder if things would have changed for his career, right? Like, I feel like Steven Spielberg is one of the, because I watched literally this morning of recording, I watched The Terminal. And that movie almost exists like, what if Steven Spielberg in an alternate universe just made romantic comedies and that movie kind of just slipped through the cracks? So, like, what if in an alternate universe Spielberg just made, like, Smokey and the Bandit? He just made, like, these car movies. And who would have made E.T.? Stanley Kubrick.
Ron Howard.
That'd be so cheesy. That'd be so much cheesier. But no trashing on Joseph Sargent because he would go on to make The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, which I know
is a great movie. I love that movie.
Yeah. So
have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh wow!
Not even the remake either. But he did also make Jaws: The Revenge.
Well, maybe that's your opinion, but
I've never seen it. But no, I'm sure he's a great director. But I feel like White Lightning just didn't capture the lightning that was there. I'll say that.
Well, I will say this though. I mean, it wasn't that really appealing to us, but I gotta wonder though. I mean, context is king a lot of times, and I just wonder, like, while this is, at our, we see car movies all the time. It's Fast and the Furious. You see a lot of like really, really good car movies. So I was just wondering, like, maybe this was like the best at the time, maybe, or
it's funny. It's funny you say that. So I was looking at YouTube for just stuff for White Lightning because I like getting context behind the scenes stuff. And I actually found a 55-minute video essay by this guy on YouTube talking about White Lightning. And in the beginning of it, he says, I saw it when I was 7 at the drive-in, and it was it was a movie that changed my life. And I gained like an appreciation for it because he kind of broke it down, every scene, the cinematography, more than I think anybody
really
would.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to it in the description for anybody who's interested, but it's funny that you bring that up. I think it probably did affect people at the time. It was probably a 73. You probably weren't getting a lot of big car movies like this.
The only one I could think, there are car movies before. I mean, there was Bullet, and there was, true. And then the French Connection scene, which is one of like the best car chases in a movie. So, but there was not a whole lot of movies where it was like car centric, where it was like the whole movie is like driving around fast in the car.
And something about cars and redneck exploitation settings just go hand in hand, and that that happens here.
And I will say too, the thing that kind of sets this movie, the reason why it's kind of done this way, like Burt Reynolds, they kind of interviewed him about this movie where, he said, he had a great time doing it, and it was just, he thought it turned out really good. Mm-hmm. At the time period though, like you said, we've talked about this before, that movies like right now, they have to have a real mass appeal to it. Like they have to appeal to this super wide audience because it's got to be something that everybody's going to want to see. But back then, movies wouldn't play necessarily in every place at all the time. So it was kind of like a regional thing. And he even said like Burt Reynolds like grew up in the South, and he made a lot of movies made for the South. And a lot of times they would release this movie in the South, and he said they would make their budget back, like just in the South, and like anything after that was just gravy. So
Yeah, and I could see that. I mean, I grew up in some southern states. Like I lived in Kentucky for a little bit, and I feel like, I was looking for ways to stream some Burt Reynolds movies, and in the town that I grew up in the local theater, they were reshowing like Smokey and the Bandit. There's just something about seeing the area you grew up in, you lived in, get represented on film. Because the South was on film, but the South as of current in the 70s probably was underrepresented. So it was probably nice to see.
well, and too, I'll say this. Also, too, this is, even though this movie did come out a year after Deliverance, at the time when Burt Reynolds was cast, Deliverance hadn't been in theaters yet.
Oh, wow.
For the movies. So, I mean, he really still was not that big breakout kind. So this was just like another small budget movie to him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, it does show, but when people talk about like classic Burt Reynolds characters, they always think of Gator McCluskey and like these types of movies. Like the first times I ever heard about it was in Archer, because the character Archer really loves Burt Reynolds as an actor, and he always makes references to White Lightning and Gator.
Yeah. And Gator's technically the superior movie to him, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe it will be when we cover it at some point.
We'll see.
Would I recommend this? If I did, it wouldn't be a very strong recommend, unfortunately. No. But
I'd only recommend it to very specific people. I'm not going to recommend it to everybody. Maybe, only if you really are into Burt Reynolds. Like this is just kind of like, Burt Reynolds relic. Otherwise, it's not really worth going to. I feel like we're going to run into movies that are going to be much better representations of his work.
Yeah, and like I said, I think we would have enjoyed this a lot more if maybe we were around in the 70s. We may have liked this a lot more, but because we have been so tainted, Nathan, it becomes that way.
Uh-huh.
One last thing I want to say, one other funny line is they have Burt Reynolds and the guy that whose girlfriends that he's been having an affair with, is her boyfriend or whatever. They have a confrontation outside of a bar, and like the guy's like, "Hey, you've been writing love letters to my girl or whatever," and he's like, he looks at him and says, "You super giant ass."
Yeah. I love their banter, because they, sorry to go in the deeper, but they have a scene earlier where he confronts him, and like he's like, are you talking to my girl? Are you getting at her? And then Burt Reynolds is like, well, are you gonna marry her? And then like that's the end of the fight. He walks away, and the guy's like, what do you mean? That doesn't have anything to do with anything. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. But it's not a bad movie, but it's not great by any means. So, no. Well, Nathan, what are we going to be covering next time?
Thank you. Oh, well, we are going to be talking about The Longest Yard from 1974. We get to do a sports movie on here, which I feel like we don't get to do too often. So I'm excited to talk about that. And I
can't wait for Adam Sandler.
Yeah. I can't wait either. Can you believe Burt Reynolds didn't do anything from then till 2004? Surprising.
Yeah.
Longest Yard is streaming over on Amazon Prime. If you do want to watch that, we are watching the 1974 version. I almost tricked them. We are watching the 1974 version, but if you do want to watch the Adam Sandler remake, it's on Prime as well if you want to check that one out.
I can't watch one without the other.
I understand. But if you enjoy this episode, you have any recommendations for us, send those on over to driveindoublefeaturpodcast at gmail.com. You can follow us over at Twitter at DIDFpod. And until next time.
Until next time.